Hi everyone, my name is Jessica, and for my semester field investigation project, I wanted to study lichen and elevation, and I wanted to see if there was a correlation between higher elevations and more lichen, more biodiversity. I live in Santa Fe, and I definitely notice more lichen than I do in Albuquerque, my hometown. So I just wanted to investigate that and see if that was actually a correlation. So just a reminder, we did study lichen in September during the Lichens on Tree Trunks lab, and this is just taken directly from that lab. Just a reminder what lichen is exactly. It's a partnership between fungus, algae, or cyanobacteria. And it's really fascinating because it forms a symbiotic relationship with the partner that it infests. It gains nutrients, but then their partner also gains protection. So it's this really interesting thing. And in my research, I'll discuss how important lichen are to the ecosystem. So my hypothesis was if you're at higher elevations in New Mexico, then there will be more diverse lichen species found. And so here's my research. This is what we found. So these researchers first talked about how essential lichen are to the ecosystem, not only in North America, but in the world. They were just studying North America, so that's why it says that. So they participate in all of these really important ecological processes and functions like rock weathering, soil formation, nutrient cycling. They're very important organisms, and sort of despite their abundance and their importance, they're really underrepresented in conservation efforts. And throughout the last century, they have been declining in both abundance and diversity, and that's documented. And that's due to habitat loss, disturbance, climate change, and air pollution. All of these factors negatively impact lichen. And here in New Mexico, we have about 1 to 14 different species that are endangered or threatened. And the loss of those species is going to negatively impact our forests and biodiversity. So continuing on here, these researchers were studying lichen in old growth forests. So lichen thrive in undisturbed areas. So in old growth forests, they are very prevalent and they're very important to the ecosystem, because they participate in these nutrient cycles and, all these kinds of things. And they provide nutrients to other organisms as well. But these researchers found that even in areas with large old trees, that for over a decade, they still found significant reductions in lichen. And that was due to everything we've talked about before, air pollution and this kind of stuff. But they also found something important, which was that it's more pronounced in smaller key habitats. And we studied this recently, fragmentation and isolation in ecosystems. And they found that to be a remarkable finding, because with the loss of a suitable habitat and competing with other species, lichen are losing their diversity and biodiversity of the entire forest. So as we mentioned before, air pollution is a real problem for lichen. They're very sensitive to habitat changes, especially man-made changes. And so, they are sensitive to, temperature, precipitation, soil chemistry, and all these kinds of things. But above all else, it's air pollution that negatively impacts lichen. And, this is a disturbance on a regional scale. So this isn't something that we can fix in one forest. This is something that prevails, throughout our entire region. So for the last 2 centuries, it's been documented that disturbance impacts lichen diversity and abundance. And so lower levels of disturbance correlate with higher levels of diversity, and vice versa. So, this is relevant, when you're studying lichen biodiversity. So because lichen participate in these important ecological services like biogeochemical cycling, biomass production, pollutant sequestration, decomposition, soil formation, the whole ecosystem suffers when we lose lichen biodiversity. So in my project, I wanted to study elevation, and I wanted to see, how many lichen could I find at different elevations. So I started here at Santa Fe Hyde Memorial State Park at the highest elevation, 8,400 feet. And then I went to Santa Fe Dorothy Stewart Trail at 7,400 feet. And I documented all the lichen that I could find. Then I went down to Albuquerque and I studied Albuquerque Prospectors Ridge Park, which is just right next to the foothills of the Sandia Peak. And then finally, I went to the Rio Grande Nature Center, which is right on the Rio Grande River at 5,000 feet. So I thought that this would give me a really diverse sampling of elevation so I could just compare my results. And here's what I found. So at the highest elevation at Santa Fe Hyde Memorial State Park, I found 4 lichen species. They were rust-colored, lime-colored, avocado, and dark green. They were very prevalent on rock walls, rocks, and trees, and they had very thick ribbons, beautiful ribbons of lichen covering almost every surface. The other thing that was really remarkable about Hyde Memorial State Park was the air quality. It was just phenomenal. The air was so sweet and rich, and it was just a really wonderful place to be. So I highly recommend, if you haven't been there, I highly recommend it. It's really beautiful. So secondly, here in Santa Fe, studied Santa Fe Dorothy Stewart Trail. And I only found one there. I only found one species. I was very surprised. That was the lime-colored species. And it was very prevalent on rocks and trees, and it had about a medium thickness. It still had some ribboning, going on, but not as much as Hyde Park. So next in Albuquerque at 6,000 feet, I found 2 species, rust-colored and lime-colored. And it was pretty spotty, and they were pretty thin. So that was the main difference that I noticed between Santa Fe and Albuquerque elevations, was the thickness. Much thicker in Santa Fe, much thinner in Albuquerque. And then finally, at the Rio Grande Nature Center, I only found one, just barely. I had to really, really dig and look because I was very shocked. I thought there would be many more species. I thought there would be, more lichen available, but I only found one on trees, and again, very thin. So here's some photos of what I found at Santa Fe Hyde Memorial State Park, 8,400 feet, 4 species. It was everywhere, on trees, on rocks. This is on the right-hand side. We have a whole rock wall. I know the scale is kind of hard to imagine, but yeah, you can see the different species here: the rust-colored, the lime-colored, the dark green, avocado. So, very rich in species diversity. Here at Santa Fe Dorothy Stewart Trail, only one. I only found the lime-colored, but it was prevalent and medium thickness, and it did have some ribboning on rocks and trees. And then here we're at Albuquerque Prospectors Ridge Park. I only found 2 species. I found the rust-colored and the lime-colored. And this rust-colored, initially I didn't even think was lichen. I thought it was like, I don't know, some kind of pesticide or something, but no, it is lichen. And then finally, here at the Rio Grande Nature Center, I found 1 species, and only on dead trees. So you can see the avocado color here on the dead trees. So, my conclusion, it does correspond with my hypothesis that, I did find more at Hyde Park, higher elevations. I did find less at the lowest elevation, more or less at the nature center. But, my research indicates something. It tells a completely different story. We're talking about all these different complex factors: air pollution, fragmentation, isolation, disturbance. These are the real factors contributing to lichen diversity and richness, or lack thereof. So if I had more technology, more access to, I don't know how you would study air pollution in different regions, but that would probably be where you would start if you were going to continue this research next time and to do it better. To consider these important factors and not just elevation with lichen diversity here in New Mexico. And these are my references. Thank you so much for your attention.